Welcome everyone. This is the Hobbies podcast with your host Elias, and today we have a guest, Theodore.
Hello.
We are going to be discussing programming as a hobby today. Let's start. What do you have to say about programming in general? Like, just introduce us to it.
Uh, so, Programming can mean many things, but it's basically the thing that runs the modern digital world.
Mm,
And You can do programming at multiple levels. You can do very surface level programming, like making a website look very nice. You can do through code. You can do very practical programming, like making uh, a booking service that saves your bookings and makes a nice list for you to look at what you've booked in and whatever. And It's just a tool to make things in this digital world using computers.
all right, that's good. So, would you consider it a creative hobby, kind of like art or architecture or uh, anything like that?
Well, yes, I would consider it more like architecture, where it can be very purposeful for a practical in a practical sense, like you want the building to have a purpose, but you can also have a building be an art piece, just make it very aesthetic. And you
Hmm.
can do both things in programming, and you can make the code itself be very aesthetic,
Mm.
or the maybe it produces pictures, or maybe it's a very nice looking game that you program.
Mm.
So I think it can definitely be both,
All right.
depending on how you use it.
Mm. And what sort of programming is it that you have been doing?
Well, now that I've just started, it's been I started with websites, which I think is the probably simplest way to get started, and that is very. Uh, Once you get the basics, it's very aesthetic, like how you play stuff, making nice colors and
Mm.
nice shapes and such. So that's very aesthetic. And now I've started doing a Discord bot, a chat bot basically that you can interact with.
Mm.
So that thing interacts with a database and it saves data, presents it nicely. So that's more technical, but still aesthetic in the way that it has to be nice to look at for the user.
All right. That's interesting. You mentioned that your first interaction with programming was with websites. What
Mm.
was that? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it was my parents that sent me to a little summer. Uh, I don't know what you would call it, like a little summer camp, basically, for programming.
Mm-hmm.
And they really focused on websites and some basics. Uh, and that was maybe I was 10 or 11 years old. It was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But that was really really fun. And afterwards, I had made a website, and it was very exciting. I made something that you can actually
Mm.
use on a computer. So that kind of got the ball rolling with like wanting to make stuff that you can actually use or have display to other people or have interact with other things.
That's fun. That's fun. You started early.
Yeah, it was not very attractive though. I think it was a light blue page with pink text. It was very nice.
I've got color theory in there as well. Amazing.
Hell yeah.
And then I remember, what was it, in ninth grade, where you created a Flappy Bird copy.
Yes, we had a very short programming class in maths. It was basically just an introduction to what programming is,
Mm.
and then we were giving a an online tool where you can make your own programs, and it would display on a nice website. So yeah, I looked up some videos, I looked up some texts, and I made a Flappy Bird.
Hmm.
So that was a it was very fun. And yeah, once again, it was aesthetic. I made multiple backgrounds you could have while you're playing, and like I said, you can share it with people. So I shared it with you. I shared it with our other friends,
Mm.
and it was fun. Yeah, it was a great game.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, hidden Easter eggs and all
Yeah, I
with
did it.
ninth grade comedy. It was great.
Yeah, I did some a bit offensive, I suppose, jokes in the game. But
Yeah, depending on how you see
depending on how you
it.
see it. Yeah, you can definitely have a lot of fun doing programming, especially if
Very
you.
entertaining for a group of ninth graders.
Right. Uh, but then you didn't really touch it for a while, I guess.
Uh, yeah, I started. What would you call it? 10th grade or
High
your
school.
high school? Yeah, okay, high school. There's many names. Well, when I started high school, I kind of I went into music production, still technical, but for a different purpose.
Mhm.
And so I started focusing on that, and there were a bit more schoolwork, a bit higher stakes, I think, but still,
Mm.
uh, yeah, I got busy with other things, and programming wasn't really a big focus of mine back then.
Mm. But now it's resurfaced as high school was ending,
Indeed,
and
indeed.
you've been working on this Discord bot for how long now?
Uh, it's probably been 2 months,
Mm.
3 months, uh, and I've been learning as I went. So I have basically made the same Discord bot 3 times now, but in 3 different ways with different structuring because I've learned from my previous mistakes. And
Mm.
well, having a poorly structured code is the worst because then you need to find something that broke because it obviously broke because you're new to programming. And if it's poorly structured, it's really difficult to find out where it broke.
Mm.
And so I've gotten better, as in it doesn't break, my code doesn't break as often, and I've gotten better, as in it's better structured, so I can find where the problem is.
Mm.
So it's gone through many iterations, and I'm kind of satisfied with where it is right now.
That's good. That's good.
Mm.
So, this Discord bot, how does it operate? I guess, or well, how has it been working on that?
Uh, well, it's been fun. It's been a great introduction to APIs, which is basically the way all of the digital world communicates. You
Can
send
you
out.
elaborate what an API is, so that everyone knows?
Absolutely. Has some very fancy name. I think it's an application program interface or something like that.
Mhm.
Very fancy technical name. But basically, what it means is different computers or different programs across the internet
Mhm.
can send a request for
Mhm.
something, and then that API will process that request and then return some data, and then you can use that data. So, for example, in the Discord bot, I can send a request to have Discord post a message, and then the bot will post a message, and then the users can send message in the chat, and then I can ask Discord for that message, and it will send me the message. I can do some stuff with that, and I can respond to it.
Mhm.
So that's the basic of how the internet works. Like your weather app is just a shell that asks a weather server, like, what's the temperature today? And then it comes back and it returns a number.
Mhm.
Uh, so that has been very like informative of how to interact with that, how to handle that,
Mm.
and it has opened up it's opened up doors to basically any program. Because with this technique, you just have to change how you respond or what message you send, and you can make your program do anything. Like I said, you can make it become a weather app by just asking another server another question.
Mhm.
So it's very flexible and very freeing.
No, That's
So
fun.
yeah,
Um, right. So, what kind of person do you think might be interested in programming, or do you think should be interested in programming?
that's a great question. Like I said, being having your code be well structured is really useful.
Mhm.
So I think it would be a bigger hurdle for someone who's very messy, or like not a very structured person in general,
Mhm.
would have a harder time working with code because it wouldn't be structured. Uh, and so that would probably be a hurdle to get past.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think that it's most people could get into programming, and there's a lot of great resources to learn basically anything you want. And I don't know, you can do very basic things like I know there are apps that will let you make your own iPhone widgets by
Mhm.
writing a little program in the app, and you can make it display anything. So you can make it show just a picture. You can make it, like I said, you can make it a weather app, a weather widget that has the exact font you want and the size of the weather, or maybe you want the weather in three different places in one widget, and you can do that yourself.
Mhm.
So I think most people can make use out of programming in general.
Just create a more well-structured life, I guess.
Yeah, and just be able to use the tools you have around you, because almost
Mm.
everyone has a phone of some kind, and almost everyone has access to the internet. If you're listening to this, you have access to the internet. So you have these digital devices, and you can customize them and make them do basically whatever you want. That's really really powerful. So I don't think there's a limit to who would find programming useful.
Hmm. That's very well put.
Mm.
So do you recommend programming as a hobby to people?
Well, that's also a great question. Yes and no. Uh, Depends on what you want to do. Like I said, the uh, examples of like making your own widget of some kind, or making a basic website. That's fun and it's quite easy, and you can get a lot of help on the way to make it easier for you.
Mhm.
Um, so that I think you can definitely have as a hobby. I also think that making bigger projects or having them uh, like making something like a Twitter-like app, that's that has a very high like barrier of entry,
Mhm.
because you have to know so much other technical things for it not to be for it, first of all not to break, and second of all to work at scale, and second of all to third of all to be secure.
Mm.
So uh, for your personal life, or is in small groups or whatever, if you're gonna share a website with 10 or 20 people, that's fine. But if
Mhm.
hundreds or thousands of people are gonna access that website, you're probably gonna have problem, because your website probably can't handle that.
Yeah, I suppose we're
So
getting more so into programming as a job then.
yeah, exactly. It's working with programs at scale. Uh, that's it requires a lot of other things. Uh,
Mm.
so if you want to do that, then you're looking at programming as a career, and that I think is way different to programming as a hobby.
Mm. All right.
So programming as a hobby to improve your life or make fun things for you and your friends, absolutely. Uh,
Mm.
if you want to make bigger things, then you're looking at programming as a career, and there's lots to learn.
All right. So, do you think it's difficult to learn programming?
Hmm. Well, no. Mostly because there are, or well, yes and no. Again. because you can, if you know what you're looking for, you can most likely find someone who has made a tool to make that easier. And if you have someone that's made a tool, there's probably some instructions how to use that tool. And if it's supposed to be an easy tool to use, there's probably easy instructions to follow.
Mm,
So if you know what you're looking for, you can absolutely do stuff easily. Uh, but if you don't really know what you're looking for, or if you just have an idea of what you want something to do, it can be very difficult to find out uh, what tools to use or where to start looking for that functionality. Uh, so, to someone who's not very uh, like in the know or have very or have like the basic or not even the basic knowledge, like the intermediate to advanced knowledge of uh, what tools or programming languages to use for different tasks, it can be quite difficult to know where to look.
mm,
So, uh, yes, easy to get started with, but to do advanced stuff, you have to know you have to
mm.
know a lot of things to find out how to do that.
All right. So, uh, me myself, I also tried to learn how to program a couple of years ago. I used some free websites online where they would give you some lessons and whatever, whatnot, and
Hmm.
like tell you about how code operates, but it didn't really seem very fruitful because I wasn't actually producing anything. I was learning about programming, but I had no practical learning. What do you think about that? Do you
Yeah.
think that you have to do practice in order to get good at programming?
No. Or
No.
well, no. If you want to do stuff with programming, you don't have to. I don't think you have to do the practice things.
Mm,
Because if you know what you want to do, you can probably look up how someone else has done it, and they will probably just use those tools that you would practice naturally, and then
mm-hmm,
you will get exposed to it. And for example, maybe you want to do a to-do list on a website, then you need a list of stuff. And what's a list? Well, that's in computer terms, that's most likely an array,
mm-hmm,
which is just a long list of items, and you can tell the computer to get item number 3 or item number 1 and whatever.
mm,
And so then you would automatically learn about lists, and you would learn how to tell the computer to get item number 3 from that list.
mm-hmm,
So I don't think you need to do practices to be able to use it. You can just as easily have some function in mind that just needs to use this, and then you will get exposed to it through that.
mm-hmm.
So to do stuff in programming, I don't think you need to practice. I haven't personally practiced much before I started programming.
All
I
right.
have also redone my Discord bot 3 times because it wasn't very well structured and I didn't know about everything. But it worked the first time. It did what I wanted it to do. It wasn't extremely efficient. It didn't need to be.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, for that, you don't need practice to be able to do stuff in programming.
All right. That's good. So I guess it really is quite open for everyone to learn. Do you think that there's good resources for people to make use of online for those who want to be
Def-
self-taught?
Definitely. Uh, there's lots of things to choose from. I would say that there could be a difficulty getting into it because most of these people are very tech savvy people that just know a bunch of things and assume that you also know how the internals of your computer works and so on. So they might talk about stuff that you don't know about, and it can be quite difficult to like find out what it is and what it does and how it works.
Mm,
So, but there's also a lot of people that focus on the absolute basics, explaining everything along the way.
mm,
So you can definitely find resources uh, on almost every level, and then how useful they will be to you will depend. But there's definitely resources to get started with and more advanced resources to keep learning if you want to.
All right. Back in the League episode, we
Mm,
talked about how you kind of need a friend in order to really get into programming. Uh, or not
mm,
into programming, to get into League because there's a lot of
yeah,
things to learn and it can get very overwhelming. Do you feel
absolutely.
like this is something that applies to programming? That you can get overwhelmed and that therefore it's good to have some kind of mentor or a coach or something?
It would definitely help. I haven't had that, and I don't think you need it. But I'm also very interested and engaged with programming. So I've uh, consumed a lot of resources throughout the years to learn about these things. So a mentor would for sure get you started way faster because you can ask all of these questions and they will know what they mean, so you can then learn about them yourself.
Mm,
Uh, so it's harder to do on your own just because you won't have anywhere to. A mentor would help you. There will be somewhere to go to get uh, the someone who would tell you where to look when you don't know stuff. I think that can be very helpful. Um, but if you just add beginner to your search of whatever you're doing, you will probably find someone on YouTube or Google that will explain it in very simple terms.
mm.
So you can get most things done without a mentor, but it would for sure help.
All right, all right, all right. Do you have any other notes on programming that you would like to tell any viewers, perhaps, or listeners?
Mm, well, I can tell them that it's getting easier and easier to do stuff
Mm,
with programming, especially on the internet and making useful websites and whatever. Like you can buy a little Raspberry Pi, which is basically just a very tiny computer, and you can copy someone else's code onto it quite easily and have a website up and running for anyone to see in, I don't know, half an hour. And it's very easy to edit, and you don't like, there's so many tools that are like pre-made for people to just make stuff, like they make the aesthetic and creative stuff so much easier now. So the barrier of entry to make something that just looks nice and has basic functionality is way lower now than it was 5, 10 years ago.
mm-hmm,
So getting into it now I think it's a great time.
mm-hmm. Well, that's very interesting.
Mm.
Um, is there anything which you find to be quite annoying about programming?
Mm, well, not necessarily about programming. Mostly, there's some things I find annoying about the community
Mm,
because some of the community are these people that love to explain everything and like be very beginner friendly, and then there are some that uh, kind of distance themselves from the beginners because they're in the know, they know how stuff works, and they don't use Windows because that's bad, and uh, like they have very specific norms that they conform to, and they very easily block people out.
would you call
And I
them
think
elitist, maybe?
very much so. Uh, and I think that's kind of I think it's unfortunate.
Mm,
It doesn't have to be like that. And well,
mm,
depending on how you interact with the community of programmers, you could get very different responses.
all right.
So I would not recommend to engage with everyone in the community as a beginner. It
It's
would
not for the
be
light-hearted.
exactly. It would very much help to have some knowledge of what you're doing before you ask the elites. But you can for sure ask the broad internet, and some nice people will for sure show up.
Mm,
Maybe in 1 in 10 will be very nice and helpful people, and then someone will be. a little passive aggressive with their answers. Well, that's unfortunate.
Speaking about community, do you think that different sections of programming have different kind of communities?
Oh, definitely. That can change from like language to language.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
so so programming languages are an interesting topic in by themselves, but they're basically just a way of writing code because everything burns down to ones and zeros that the computer uses to do stuff, and it's
Hmm.
just how you uh, write code that humans can understand that turns into ones and zeros.
Mm,
You can do that in very different ways, and the elitists will tell you that their way is the best, always.
mm,
And nowadays, there are so many languages that the elitists for every specific language are way rarer. It's way more common to have someone be proficient in maybe 10 of the languages.
mm,
And I think that's helped a lot with the community and like uh, having communication between different communities because multiple people knows multiple languages and take part in these different communities.
mm.
So it's gotten better, but uh, yeah, depending on where you start, you will for sure have a different experience.
All right. Uh, have you considered, so you do music as well, right?
Yes.
Have you considered combining your musical skills and your programming skills to perhaps make an application that produces sounds for an instrument, for example?
I have thought about it, but that's also something that has a quite high barrier to entry.
Mm,
Uh, because that's you can probably find a tool that will do the basic things for you, but at the level of music that I want to make, I want to have lots of control, which means I have to have lots of control in the code I write,
mm,
which makes it way harder. And then you actually have to consider how the computer turns ones and zeros into actual noise that you will hear, and
mm,
that will be well, it's very difficult. There's a lot of math and there's some physics also because you need to know how sound works. So
wow.
barrier to entry on that is quite high, and I haven't
Ah.
dared to take that on yet.
Well, hopefully we'll see that in the future then, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
All right. This has been a fun episode. I think
Mhm.
that we can wrap it up here. We've talked about the community. We talked about what kind of person might be interested. And yeah, I hope that anyone who listened might consider programming in the future as a hobby. Uh, and I wish them all the listeners here a very good day. So yeah.
Yeah. See ya.